You're listening to a 3CR podcast created in the studios of independent community radio station 3CR in Melbourne, Australia. For more information, go to allthews.3cr.org.au.
Sabah al-Khair, good morning dear listeners. You're listening to Radio 3CR on 855 AM and Palestine Remembered with Robert Martin, Nasser Mashni and Yusuf Ahmed al-Rimawi.
Palestine Remembered is Australia's only English language radio program that is totally dedicated to Palestine. We'd like to welcome those listening on 855 and those that will join us on podcast at 3cr.org.au.
Thanks for joining us. Stay with us and enjoy the episode.
Good morning, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Palestine Remembered. Before we start, just a quick Ramadan Kareem to all of my brothers and sisters in Islam who are fasting. May your prayers and fasts be accepted, and our thoughts obviously with those in Gaza experiencing the very worst of Ramadan experiences, as all of us. It's certainly not a time to be celebrating. A couple of quick announcements. I'm joined in the studio by my daughter, the magnificent Janine. Good morning, Janine.
Good morning.
Thank you for getting up and coming with Dad.
Yeah, no worries.
It's an opportunity for her to get some hours up on her learner, so it's really good that you got up. But it's 21 years ago since Rachel Corrie was killed. For those that think that it's only 161 days, this conflict's only 161 days ago, Rachel Corrie, an American activist, stood in front of a house that was about to be run over by a Caterpillar bulldozer specifically designed and armour-plated to protect the army officer driving it. She was in a high visibility vest, waving at the driver to say, "I'm not moving, don't demolish this house." He didn't stop, cruelly drove straight over her, crushing her and killing her. May you rest in peace, Rachel. As I said earlier, it's 161 days since this brutality started, since the world woke up. When I say the world, not from the sense of probably you listening or anybody that's going to be listening on the podcast, certainly not from the respect of my family, but it's 161 days since quote-unquote lay West, polite society, Chardonnay sipping lefties, whatever you want to call them, woke up to what we've been saying for 76 years, that Zionism is white supremacism, that Zionism is racism, that Zionism is chauvinism, that Zionism is every bit of evil that was settler colonialism on this continent, in Aotearoa, West Papua, Kashmir, Turtle Island, everywhere in the world where somebody felt that they had a supreme culture and killed off or tried to kill off, displace or threw out indigenous people to take land and resource. It's not 161 days, as we know. Interestingly, through the week, the pressure has been working. All of our chants and our rallies and our petition making, finally, Penny Wong has decided to reinstate the UNRWA funding. 6 million, she added another couple of million, and we're going to send some parachutes apparently. That should help the starvation of 2 million people. It's just sickening. You know, the US is absolutely 100% complicit in every child's death, every woman's death, every man's death, as is Zionism. This would end today if Joe Biden said, "That's it. I'm cutting off the money. I'm cutting off the weaponry. You're done." And it could be aided if Australia did the same thing. It could be aided if Australia did the same thing. We are as complicit. We're sending componentry. We're signing deals with companies that are riddled with crimes against humanity, like Albert. We've given them $1 billion contract. It's just sickening that our taxpayer money is going to Israel's biggest weapons manufacturer to aid in this genocide and the ongoing oppression of Palestinians. But people are waking up. Now, in the same moment that we restored aid to UNRWA, of course you can't give Palestinians any sort of win In that same few days, we've had visas cancelled. Palestinians who were given visas and the opportunity to escape and find some sanctity or safety in Australia, their visas were cancelled. And they weren't cancelled before they left Gaza. They were cancelled mid-flight. A Palestinian woman with her 2 children, one 13 and one I think around 8 or 9, had left Egypt, or got out of Gaza first, flew out of Egypt into Dubai, were met by a representative of the Australian government, saw their name on a piece of paper, got excited, we're special, there's a piece of paper with our name on it. They went up to this guy and he said, good news, the girls can go through, your 2 children, but you can't go through, your visa's been denied. A day and a bit ago, a 23-year-old Palestinian male, he's now living in an airport, can't get back to Egypt, can't leave the airport because he doesn't have a visa for Turkey. Australia's just sitting there redoing its security checks. The cruelty of having issued a visa and then snatching it away. I mean, imagine what this mother and her 2 children must have been feeling, having left Egypt, got to Dubai, so she's almost halfway here, and then from Dubai to Australia, in that section, the 2 hours or 3 hour layover, she's told you can't continue. Your children can, but you can't. What do? To have hope given and then snatched away so cruelly. But it's okay. We've given $6 million back to UNRWA. It's just obscene, insane. And it speaks to the language that our government is speaking to Palestinians, that we're not human, that we don't belong, that we shouldn't be here, that, we're not going to be treated as equally. Because there's been 2,000 odd of these visas, refugee visas. I don't know why an Israeli would need a refugee visa, but anyway, 2,000 of these visas issued to Israelis and Palestinians. About 300 odd Palestinians have made it here out of the 2,000. All 2,000 Israelis have made it here. All 2,000 Israelis have made it here. Compounding that grief is the ex gratia payment of $75,000 to any Australians that were victims of Hamas's quote-unquote terror, as if every Palestinian in Gaza and any Australian that's lost family hasn't been impacted by Israeli terror. Israeli terror. And it's really, really impacting, and the government keeps talking about social cohesion and what that might look like. Well, they're destroying it one word at a time as they continue to elevate the suffering and life of one over the suffering of another. Israel is using starvation as a weapon. Now, I want you to think about the last time you were proper hungry. It's not a great feeling, and how far away from food were you? Perhaps just waiting to get home and you missed lunch, or work through lunch at work, or whatever it might be. And that pang of hunger might be an hour or 2. It might have been 4 hours. But for Palestinians, those pangs of hunger are 161 days now. People are dying every day from starvation. They're being murdered by starvation. They're being slaughtered with starvation, killed by a genocidal regime that is interested only in the annihilation of the Palestinian identity. And when you think about what starvation is, if you're going to be killed and you get shot in the head, that's instantaneous. Those around you suffer. I mean, you have died. But for the person that's actually starving, it takes weeks and a month, maybe 6 or 8 weeks to die of starvation. It's not a quick thing. It's not a quick thing. It is a slow and torturous death. For a mother to watch her child starve, it's torture. When the Human Rights Watch, the EU chief, UN experts are all saying that Israel is using starvation as a weapon, what are the reports we hear in the Western media? What do we get? Gazans go hungry. The desperate search for food in Gaza. There's no desperate search. We know where the food is. Hold the Israeli regime to account. Start speaking truth. You matter little. People are bypassing you entirely. Today's The Australian has a front page piece on Deborah Conway, who is an Australian Jewish woman, and I would say of, not great politics, but, she has a right as an Australian to have the politics she wants. And she went on Patricia Karvalis' show, former 3CR presenter who's forgotten her roots. Patricia interviewed her, and Patricia said about, there's a lot of kids being killed. And Deborah Conway said, well, it depends what you mean by kids, 16, 17-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, are they kids? She believes that, it was a messy way for her to say, like, if a parent puts a gun in their hand, are they really kids anymore? Anyway, if you're interested, you can buy the Australian, but I wouldn't imagine you would. But there was a really interesting paragraph about the best bit of truth they've published for a long time, other than a quote that they got from a rally that I said. But it says, Conway believes activists have tried to reclassify the meaning of Zionists from being someone who advocates for an independent Jewish state where Jews can live in safety to being something repugnant, akin to being a white supremacist or an advocate for apartheid. She says they have tried to make being a Zionist an impolite position to hold in polite society. She's right. You'd have no place in polite society being a Zionist. There is no politeness in supremacy. There is no politeness in racism. There is no politeness in ethnic cleansing and genocide. There is no politeness, Deborah. You're not welcome. And she claims she's been cancelled, you see. Like, life's really, really tough for her. But she's been watching the winds and smelling the change in the air because things are changing, whether it's school strikes, whether it's the HTA blockade, whether it's, I'm speaking today at the AUKUS rally. One of our comrades, Ihab, is speaking at the climate change rally at 2 o'clock at Treasury. I'm at 1 o'clock at the State Library today, so join us. The Darebin and Meribek council motions, they've doubled down on their Palestine motions. They're on their way to being apartheid-free councils. I mean, the winds have changed. The winds have changed. Israel is a pariah state. And we just heard from Giselle's guest earlier on about the 350 Lebanese that have been killed since October 7. You haven't heard it anywhere. Or the 400 Palestinians killed in the West Bank. You haven't heard that anywhere. Or the 7,000 West Bank Palestinians rounded up and put into gulags. Or the ongoing ethnic cleansing and destruction of villages and the rampages by these messianic settlers. You don't hear that anywhere. You hear it in non-mainstream sources, of course, and increasingly the future, the children that are attending those protests, the school strike, the children that are attending our rallies, are curating their own newsfeed. And so they're not getting told by Murdoch or Channel 9 or 3AW or the Herald Sun what they should believe or not. The US last week was in Lebanon speaking to the Lebanese diplomats saying, can you get Hezbollah to go north of the Litani River? Israel believes that the northern border of Israel should be the Litani River, which is about a quarter of the way up to Lebanon. That's the natural border of Israel, they believe. They're saying, that's where they want Hezbollah to move north of the Litani River and to give Israel some security. Brilliantly, the Lebanese minister said to the American, you got more chance of moving the Litani River to Israel's border than Hezbollah moving north. A big shout out to our crew at the State Library, everyone that's advocated for there, all of the staff that have signed an open letter to the CEO. Real pressure is working. There is no space for racism, no space for hate. There is no space for apartheid. There's no space for Zionism. My friends, we're going to go to some community announcements, followed by our guest, David Glanz.
Well, brothers and sisters, what a show of strength we've got here today.
Local issues.
So I'm here at the school kids strike for climate action.
Live coverage.
Join the spirit of this gathering here today at IMAR. Your voices.
So give us a bit of a lowdown about what's happening.
There's about 250 people here at the moment.
Community struggles.
We're now in front of the Tundaminawaya Maulboyhina Monument. I'd like to thank Community Radio 3CR, who for the last decade has been broadcasting here.
Feed Radical Radio. Your membership is vital.
A few hundred people about to pass us right now. Lots of young people standing up for their future.
Subscribe today.
Go to 3cr.org.au/subscribe or call the station on 9419 8377.
3CR, here to stay.
Welcome back, listeners. I'm very excited to tell you we're joined by David Glanz, a member of the Media Union, the Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance, and a founder of the MEAA Members for Palestine. And the Members for Palestine, MEAA Members for Palestine, last week organised 7 rallies around the country in solidarity with journalist Antoinette Lattouf, who was sacked by the ABC for sharing an Instagram post criticising Israel. Good morning, mate.
Good morning, Nasser. How are you?
Yeah, really well indeed, David. David, tell us about the campaign.
Well, Antoinette Lattouf is a respected journalist. She was hired by the ABC Radio Sydney to present a radio show for 5 days just before Christmas last year. 3 days into the gig, she was basically kicked out the door. And it is very, very clear that she was sacked because of she is pro-Palestine. The official reason was that she shared an Instagram post from Human Rights Watch, which is a very respected human rights organisation. Human Rights Watch was warning that Israel was using hunger as a weapon against Palestinians in Gaza. Now, we're very focused on hunger in Gaza today in March. They were warning about this back in December. The ABC itself reported on what Human Rights Watch was saying, but when it came to Antoinette Lattouf sharing the Human Rights Watch post on Instagram, that was the excuse to basically to sack her. And as her lawyer said in the Fair Work Commission, she's probably the first journalist in history to be fired for reporting a fact. Now, she's fighting back in the Fair Work Commission and in the federal court against her sacking. And obviously, we've been on her side, and we organised rallies outside the Fair Work Commission in Sydney and ABC offices around the country last Friday in her solidarity. Because obviously, if they can sack Antoinette, they can sack many others who stand up for freedom and liberation amongst media workers.
And it's not just about Palestine. I mean, the reality is if you can sack somebody, and as I understand it, David, the ABC ended up sharing the same story that she reshared. But if you can sack...
Absolutely. There was no question of her sharing a rumour or a conspiracy theory. But I think the other part of the story is that there was a concerted effort by Israel supporters organised in a WhatsApp chat to put pressure on the ABC to get her sacked. And what's come out of the Fair Work Commission is that the managing director of the ABC, David Anderson, on day one of her job, was already getting complaints about her. So it wasn't about her performance or what she said on air. There were complaints coming in because she is a woman of Lebanese background who supports Palestine, and Zionists were basically pounding the ABC with complaints from the very beginning. And 3 days in, even though everybody agreed she was doing a great job on air, she was sacked. So there's a second side to the story, and that's the way in which supporters of Israel, they can't defend what's happening in Gaza now. They can't defend it. So what they try to do is they try to attack those of us who are pro-Palestine by weakening our arguments in the areas of culture and media. Because, of course, it's not just Antoinette Lattouf. There are 4 writers and poets who have had their contracts torn up at the State Library of Victoria, transparently because they're pro-Palestine, and that includes a very active member of our group, MEAA for Palestine. There is the group that was barred from One Adelaide just recently. There was the controversy over the Sydney Theatre Company, where actors went on stage at curtain call wearing the keffiyeh. Supporters of Israel are desperately trying to destroy all voices of dissent in the media and in culture. So it's important we stand up for all these people, not just Antoinette.
Indeed. But they're failing. I mean, if you have a look, I read some reports about the WOMAD festival in South Australia. It was a festival about Palestine, apparently. If you're a union member and unions are strong, you actually have some real power. Where's the campaign at with respect to creating a safe workspace? Because, I mean, it isn't just Antoinette sacking, but you had her name escapes me right now because I can't think of it, from the ABC deciding to quit in December because the ABC was not a safe workspace. What's it like for your members at the moment?
It's tough. Some of us from MEAA for Palestine actually met with union officials yesterday to discuss the broader situation. And the message we got from them is that our colleagues at the ABC are feeling ignored and feeling discredited. And there's no question that people of colour, not just pro-Palestinian people, have a particularly tough time. Think of Stan Grant, probably the most prominent broadcaster from First Nations background, walking away from the ABC, not because the racism he was getting from the public, but because of the failure of the ABC to back him up. So our colleagues inside the ABC clearly have a job of work to do. After Antoinette was sacked early in this new year, our colleagues, MEAA members in the ABC, had a meeting. They voted no confidence in David Anderson, which apparently has had a little bit of an impact on him. He agreed to meet the union for the first time in a long time. They threatened potential industrial action if nothing was done. And they are certainly trying inside the ABC to establish a culture of respect for people's professionalism, but also for people regardless of their ethnicity, gender, religion, or whatever. So that's a work in progress, and we obviously wish them all the best.
Indeed, indeed. And that journalist was Noor Haider, who's now at the Guardian. David, but it's not just the ABC. I mean, I've spoken to reporters of colour at the Courier Mail, the Sydney Morning Herald, the Financial Review, and they've asked me for comments, and I've given them some stuff, and they've gone, look, I'm not going to be able to use that. And it's not because I'm not telling the truth, but they know that they can't actually report it. And the quote unquote white guys don't have a problem saying that to me, but I get apologies from those people. What can we do to support them? Is there anything that we can do there?
Well, I think it's more generally we need to build the movement to bend the mainstream media towards telling the truth. The problem is the default position of the Australian government, the Australian establishment, and therefore of the senior editors at the big mainstream media. The default position is pro-Israel because it suits Australia's interest to support Israel as a watchdog for Western interests in the Middle East. And so to get them to eat, I mean, let's face it, it was at least 2 months into us being on the streets every single week before The Age published its first report saying that there were protests taking place in central Melbourne on a Sunday. Today in the Age, I think there's quite a reasonable article in which you're featured very well, talking about the rise of campaigning and organising, not just amongst Palestinians and Muslims, but more broadly. So I think it's the building of the mass movement that will force management onto the back foot. Remember, they're very biased. Something like 100+ journalists, including myself, signed an open letter a few months ago, not saying solidarity with Palestine, even though I'm sure that's what most of us think, but just calling for fair and unbiased reporting. The response of editors in the mainstream media was to say, if you sign that open letter, you are biased, and therefore you cannot report on Middle East affairs.
Just shocking.
These are the same editors who took Israeli money to fly to Israel to have guided tours of what Israel wanted to show them. So journalists who have gone to Israel on Israeli money are apparently not biased. Those of us who are standing up for fair reporting are dismissed as being one-sided. But we can expose that hypocrisy, we can build a movement, and we can create a space for the kind of article that we can see in The Age today.
We've got a couple of minutes, David, very quickly. What can our listeners do to support MEAA for Palestine?
Well, I think the first thing you could do is write an email to David Anderson. He's the managing director of the ABC, saying that Antoinette Lattouf should be reinstated because, as you say, it's not just about her, but if she was reinstated, it would be a big victory for all journalists of colour and for all of us who support support fair reporting on the issue of Palestine and on Gaza. So you could write to the managing director, David Anderson at the ABC. I'm sure on the ABC there's a contact page where you can register your dissent. But I think more importantly, let's keep on building the movement. Be on the rally on Sunday. Build your local community group. Get active on your campus. And most of all, get active in your union, because Australian unions have a fantastic history of solidarity with national liberation movements. You think back to the struggle against South African apartheid, the struggle for Vietnamese liberation. The best of the union movement has been with those struggles. So if you're not in a union, join it. If you're in a union, join your Palestine organising committee, and let's build the biggest possible movement. On Sunday week, the Victorian Trades Hall Council has announced that it's organising a big union contingent to join the Sunday rally. The Refugee Action Collective, which I'm also part of, will be building a contingent to join the rally. We can come together on the streets and make it very clear to the media they can't ignore us, they can't sideline us, they can't marginalise Palestinian voices.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks so very much for joining us. David Glanz, founder of MEAA for Palestine. Thanks so much, David. Don't forget today, AUKUS rally at 1 o'clock, State Library. I'll be speaking there. 2 o'clock, there's a climate change rally at Treasury Gardens. Ihab from the Sit-In Intifada will be there. And our dear friend of the show, Geordie Silverstein, it's her birthday today. Happy birthday, Geordie. I hope you have a great day. And remember, my friends, there's never been a better time for a free Palestine, from the river to the sea. Join us next week and tune into the podcast and share with your friends.
Stand in solidarity with Palestine this Sunday.
With the most devastating attack ever launched on the people of Gaza, it's time for all of us to stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people.
Israel has waged war on the Palestinians for the last 75 years. The Nakba, ethnic cleansing, occupation of the West Bank, East Jerusalem and Gaza. Israel has now imposed a total blockade on Gaza and declared war, stopping food, electricity and fuel and launching an all-out attack.
We have to mobilise to show our support for Palestine. 12 p.m, State Library, this Sunday.
Rally to demand freedom and justice for Palestine. No war on Gaza.
Free Palestine Melbourne is a 3CR supporter.
You've been listening to a 3CR podcast produced in the studios of independent community radio station 3CR in Melbourne, Australia. For more information, go to allthews.3cr.org.au.